Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Micah from Tokensoft, and we're here with the Connext team. Thanks, everybody, for joining. So before we get started, I'll just introduce who we've all got here. I'm Micah. I handle marketing for Tokensoft. We've got Chris, who handles engineering and tech for Tokensoft. We've got Mason, founder and CEO. And then from the Connext side, we've got Matthew, who's the head of ecosystem at the Connext Foundation, and Sanche, who's a protocol engineer at Proxima Labs. And we've also got Noah as well from Tokensoft.
Awesome, Micah. Thank you so much for having us and for doing this with us.
Yeah, we've been looking forward to this. As you all know, Tokenext and Tokensoft recently partnered for a first ever cross-chain AirDrop. And we decided to just get on this space today and talk a little bit about, what it took to get over the finish line, the technical challenges, how this partnership came to be, et cetera, et cetera. So first off, I'll just give a little bit of context about Tokensoft. Tokensoft is a provider of launch services for blockchain projects. We do token launches, distributions. We support incentivized testnets, hackathons. Any place you need to distribute a token, we can support that. We've been operating for about 6 years now. Helped launch over 100 projects, worked with some big names in the space, such as xCALL, Moonbeam, The Graph, Avalanche, Hedera Hashgraph. And Matthew, do you want to say a little bit about Connext?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks so much. So Connext, for a lot of you that don't know, Connext has been around since 2017, and actually was largely founded with the vision of trying to build scalability mechanisms for Ethereum. So back then, our founders had focused primarily on innovations and research around like early state channel design, and then ultimately ended up building some of the earliest primitives around L2s that we end up using a lot today. As we continued through the history and growth of Connext, back in 2021, we released the X-Pollinate bridge, which saw a ton of usage, and then subsequently, as we kind of expanded our thesis on what it means to be an interoperability provider, we moved towards the network upgrade of Amarok, which happened last year, a huge milestone for the Connext ecosystem, allowing for arbitrary messaging and trust minimized communication and interaction between chains. That's a little bit about the history, and if you'd like, I can dive into more of the motivation behind that, or however you see fit.
Amazing. Yeah, we'd love to hear a little more about that.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think Connext is largely motivated by the idea of building open standards and public goods, to ultimately for the goal of creating a Web3 space that is more kind of accessible and usable for end users, and one that allows for Web3 projects to more effectively reach those user bases. I think as we've seen the proliferation of chains over the last several years, something that's becoming more readily apparent is that users aren't necessarily going to be onboarded through Ethereum like we've seen through the majority of the time in the space. Oftentimes they're entering in on other chains, and they're maybe purpose oriented behind like interacting with a specific DApp or taking part in a specific event. And so at Connext, we really strive to build open standards and public goods that basically just increase the usability and accessibility of the space at large. We kind of colloquially have referred to Connext as the HTTP of Web3, in that we strive to build a Web3 ecosystem and particularly open infrastructure that allows for individuals to create applications that can be used by any user on any chain with any token. And so that part of that accessibility is that openness, and transparency, and really building open standards. So Today, Connext is a thriving ecosystem of builders that includes like researchers, Web3 enthusiasts across a lot of independent organizations that are basically working together to define some of those cross-chain experiences and release public goods that people can utilize regardless of the chain they're on or what they're doing. Um, yeah, so that's a little bit about Connext.
I think one
Amazing.
trend that's been really interesting has been, a lot of the applications that we see today as they're starting, they're natively multi-chain. And it's really interesting because if you go back, to 3 years ago, it was like you had to pick one chain, one community to be a part of. And when apps go multi-chain, that presents another problem. It's uh, how do you be inclusive of all the different communities that you're operating on now? And so it seems very timely that something like Connext is possible, and something has come up that is able to interconnect all of these different communities and to allow these apps to be multi-chain in a variety of ways today.
Yeah, Mike, I couldn't agree more. So maybe for a little context, but before we dive truly into the cross-chain airdrop mechanism and the partnership between Connext and Tokensoft, I'll maybe take a quick moment here to talk about some of the other offerings that the listeners may not have been aware of from Connext. So basically, we're striving to build this holistic suite of tooling that works together again towards that ultimate goal of building these applications that, regardless of the chain that the user finds themselves on, the token they may hold, they can interact with it as seamlessly as if that application were deployed directly on that chain. We have xCALL, which is the core primitive behind how the Connext technology works, and later in the space, I'm sure Sanche will get into a bit of the specifics there. But building on top of that core primitive, we have the chain abstraction toolkit, and that basically just allows for again dApps to deploy on any chain, reach any user, and use any token, all while abstracting kind of the chain itself and the bridge. We believe that ultimately decentralized applications will be best adopted if users do not have to think about like some of the complexities of the underlying chains themselves. So the chain abstraction toolkit largely is an innovation in user experience that allows for dApps to just have individuals connect their wallet regardless of the chain. And behind the scenes, we abstract away any like swapping or bridging activity that may need to happen in order to facilitate these transactions and allow them to be possible. And so largely that's just an improvement on the basic dApp user interface. A lot of people have been speaking recently as well about a standard that Arjun introduced, one of the founders of Connext. And that is basically a new open token standard that allows tokens to move across chains with zero slippage. But the key component there, if any of you have used bridges in the past, you know that today each bridge will actually mint its own representation of a token when they bridge it for the first time. And so there's a lot of confusion, especially for new Web3 users, around like what version of the token should they use, what's the canonical one, how to get to it, if there's a bridge that they should or should not be using. All of that requires like a lot of tangential knowledge that all ultimately leads to a less usable experience. And so with XERC20, it's this proposed EIP that basically is a minimal extension onto the ERC20 interface that allows what we're calling token sovereignty. So effectively, instead of the bridges owning the token contracts on other chains, the token issuer themselves retains that control. And basically, this small extension gives like a mint and burn mechanism and lockbox through which token issuers can like rate limit different bridges that they choose to participate with. And ultimately, this leads to a world where if you're a token issuer, you have one single representation of your token per chain. So helps to prevent like liquidity fragmentation and a lot of the concerns around bootstrapping. And then the final one I'll plug just as a little bit of like a tease in advance is that we are working towards a cross-chain governance toolkit, which basically is like a no-code toolkit for DAOs that will allow for some very interesting new use cases around DAOs, including like cross-chain interactions and payouts. And so some really exciting news coming out of that. But I'll pause there, Micah, for you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for that explanation. That was it's a great way of spelling it all out for everyone. So we've got Chris here from Tokensoft to talk a little bit about what it took from the technical side to support this, what was needed to build, what already existed. Because I think a lot of people, they see these really clean user experience on the front end, but they don't realize quite how much engineering work goes into the back end. So Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about how this works from a technical side?
Sure thing. Although I'll preface it by saying the one part of this that we definitely haven't touched so far is the cross-chain part, because that's incredibly important to get correct. I mean, everyone's familiar with all the bridge hacks that have happened, so it's been really good to partner with the Connext team. And each of those items that Matthew mentioned are things that we've been paying pretty close attention to for our token issuers and clients, because you can imagine like the ability to have a token that moves across chains, to not have to select a canonical blockchain at the beginning of your project, and then to have cross-chain governance tools could be pretty useful. So going into this partnership, what we pretty rapidly realized is Connext had all of the important cross-chain message passing infrastructure. And I think Sanjay is here to explain some more of how that works around xCALLs and things like that. But then built on top of that, Tokensoft had already developed a pretty deep technical stack on distribution contracts. And so like we kept running, we decided like, let's just adapt the Connext tooling and underlying calls to our existing infrastructure. So work together on that. That was pretty great. And basically what that means is that Tokensoft distribution mechanisms allow you a lot of flexibility in who gets tokens, how many tokens they get, and when they get them. And so what we ended up coming up with Connext is a relatively straightforward use case here, where at the beginning of September, tokens are going to be distributed to roughly 50,000 people across 4 blockchains. And I think the coolest part of this from a technical perspective is that the Connext team recognized they wanted to reward both EOA accounts, that's like your typical MetaMask account, as well as smart contracts. And so this infrastructure allows smart contracts that only exist on, say, Optimism to claim the token, even if the mechanism or the distribution contract we built exists on another chain. So that to me is like the most fun part that I think hasn't been done anywhere in the world yet. But basically how it works is there's a distribution contract on one chain called Chain A. And then that's holding these tokens that follow the xERC20 standard that Matthew mentioned earlier. So let's say you have, we'll just call it like 1 million tokens sitting in this contract on Chain A. So people who are eligible for the airdrop can go in and they can claim tokens using a typical Merkle proof, right? This is where you take a bunch of eligible addresses and quantities, hash them together in a tree, bundle it together into a cryptographic proof. And that's pretty straightforward. They can use a digital signature with their EOA to override where the tokens are being sent. So, typically the Merkle proof would say like, this address is eligible to receive this many tokens on this chain. So one thing that the users can do is say, actually, I want to receive the tokens on a different chain. And then the cross-chain infrastructure allows Connext and Tokensoft distribution contract to ship the token off to the different chain as they specified, while still following all the rules of the distribution. And then finally, for some addresses like contracts, they're not able to access the distribution contract directly. Like, for example, they might be a contract on a different chain, or maybe they just don't have any of the underlying native token on that chain. So if they're entirely on a different chain, they can still participate in this airdrop by calling what we're calling satellite contracts. And so these are pretty lightweight contracts that exist on the other 3 chains. And then when you call the satellite, it fires off a cross-chain call to the underlying distributor through Connext and then ships the tokens back to you across the chains. So a lot of moving pieces under the hood there. Worked with the Sherlock team to audit this. It's been a great experience so far. and we're really excited to see it go live in September.
Amazing. Thanks for giving that extra context. And Sanche, is there anything you wanted to add on that topic about what it takes to create this kind of distribution?
Of course. Chris has very well summarized the user experience and what went into how complicated it went when we were trying to understand what it takes to assemble all the data points from different multiple chains. So Connext previously and as of now has supported more than 7 chains, and we are still expanding. Given that there are 7 to 17 chains, and previously where we had Vector, our previous version to the Memorock was NXCP and now Memorock. So we had this large amount of data sets which we had to combine. So a lot of brainstorming went into how these data points could be assembled and could be laid out to calculate what is the best way to reward the community and how it can be done. So this is one of the biggest challenge which we faced while doing so. Second was the user experience which we wanted was to make sure that any user who are coming in, they don't really face any downtime to the UI itself. So everyone at the ops side, all the database and the server which was hosted, we did multiple load tests. We try to make sure that everyone is able to have the smooth experience as much as possible. To add in the point to this would be the token itself. So Matthew initially mentioned that we are using XERC20 standard. So the problem which we were exactly facing over here is that when you try to create the tokens via single bridge, creating the next token itself, in the ecosystem, anyone, even if you are using the native bridge, Connext bridge, or any other bridge, people will be able to get the same token at the destination of it. So we are trying to create these understanding of how to say. So we are trying to create the token in a way where we don't have to limit ourselves with the liquidity which will be needed as AMM or the different versions of the token itself will be conflicting to enable the expand the ecosystem, I would say, and have the generalizability of the XERC20 that will enable any user to play with the same tokens via different bridges. So I think it would be great to learn about the token sovereignty itself and the open standard of XERC20. I'm really excited about that.
Awesome, Sanjay, thank you. And Micah, maybe if it makes sense, this may be a good time to actually just cover some of the key details that I know a lot of people listening may be interested in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So let me just run through the key details of the drop itself, and then we can kind of foray back into some of the motivations and things like that behind it. So by way of the drop itself, the claiming period will begin on September 5th at 1 p.m. UTC. Between now and then, users can check their eligibility by going to airdrop.connext.network, wherein you'll be able to connect your wallet and see the eligibility criterion. If you do have any questions on kind of like the granular point system that we used for eligibility or some of the criterion that went into that, there are links throughout the eligibility page, which will drive you to our documentation on all of that. As always, of course, if you do have questions, you can go to discord.gg/connext in order to join our server. And then I think the final key detail to mention there is as Connext moves towards the Connext DAO and with the airdrop kicks that period of Connext off, we are asking for individuals that are more interested in like taking an active role in governance of the community and really helping to lead the vision and charge that Connext has built over the years. If you're interested in doing so, we are opening our call for delegates to help with governance. And so between now and beginning of day on September the 3rd, we have that open call. You can go to delegate.connext.network in order to apply for that, or take a look at like our announcement thread or blog, both of which will link to the opportunity to do that. So again, for anyone that wants to take a more active role in the Connext ecosystem and help to build this future that we envision, we do ask that anyone interested apply to be a delegate.
Amazing. I appreciate you sharing that extra context there. I know that's very helpful for everybody in the audience. And let's go over to Mason now, who's going to share a little bit about Tokensoft's role in the airdrop process and how this partnership came to be.
Thanks, Micah. So Tokensoft has always been or strived to be the best place to launch and distribute tokens. And so from very early on, we were supporting, fundraisers. We've had a lot of customers that have done, a lot of large fundraisers on the platform. And naturally, very early on, we were pulled into the distribution process as well. A lot of the projects that are launching, they're not experts in fundraising technology or the fundraising process, and they're not experts in token distributions. They only really do it once. And so we've always strived to be sort of the trusted platform for launching and distributing tokens. And so one thing we noticed in the past few years, I feel like if you go back to 2017, once Ethereum was up and running and it was possible to do, a lot of things, it feels like everyone was launching a token on just Ethereum. You go to 2020 through 2021, and you see people launching on one chain still, whether it was Solana, Ethereum, etc. But you didn't quite see the multi-chain activity yet. It was like you had to pick one community and really be immersed in that and be aligned there. And this third phase that we're seeing is that we've seen this year is every app that we're talking to is multi-chain in some way. Either they're on EVM and non-EVM chains, or they're on all the EVM chains. We've sort of entered a phase where everything is natively multi-chain, and every application is natively multi-chain. And what's interesting is, when you go to launch and distribute a token, do you have to really pick one chain? If your community is on all these different chains, does it make sense to operate just on a single chain? And so that's when we came across, the Connext technology, and it made a lot of sense to see if we could do something on the token distribution side. That's where the biggest need has been for our customers. And so we're really excited about this integration and, what can you do with it? What we've launched together is a way to not only distribute a token using the Tokensoft platform, but it's to allow for the distribution of a token and the claiming of that token on any chain. And so when apps are going to launch their token and they're on 4 or 5 different chains, they don't really have to pick a winner. They can allow the token to be accessible on any chain. So it's creating sort of a more inclusive and open environment, and that's something that we really value. And at the same time, the Tokensoft journey has been, we started in 2017. I think we were actually talking to Connext when you guys were doing some different stuff back then. And so for us, we had Web 2 style technology, very centralized. And we're trying to adopt as many open source components in the platform as possible. And the reason is you just have, with open source, you have better security, you have better transparency, all the rules are public, and it's just more, trusted software. It's more self-owned and sovereign software. And so the Connext technology stack is very interesting to us because it's open source. There's an EIP open right now that anyone can go and comment on. And so we've integrated that technology to allow for cross-chain airdrops. So cross-chain airdrops where you can originate the token on one chain but have it be accessible on any chain natively when you go to claim it. So we're really excited about this and sort of the world that's going to create moving forward, and definitely interested in other applications that technology like this enables as well.
And Mason, just as a fun side point for everyone listening here, I think that I can personally attest to Tokensoft upholding like the kind of ethos of acceptance and openness. As a funny side fact, I was a founder of a company many years ago, back in early 2018, where when Mason and Tokensoft were just getting kicked off, they actually like warmly opened up their offices to us and gave us office space when we were pre-funding and looking for a spot. So yeah, we have a long history with Tokensoft, both on the Connext side and personally. And so yeah, incredibly honored and excited to be working alongside you guys on this.
Yeah, we've been connected for a long time.
Yeah, and just to share one more fun fact, Connext was actually one of the first projects to ever come on the Tokensoft podcast, the Friend Zone. I'll share their episode in the chat here.
So maybe now is a good time, since we've kind of been talking a lot about the motivation behind the cross-chain airdrop, obviously the partnership with Tokensoft and some of the key details. I think one thing that we would just like to put out there for the sake of being thorough and for helping to protect our community and the broader Web3 space is, as always, when you're talking about an airdrop or things of that nature, it's really good to be very vigilant. And so what I will say is, as some basic principles, like airdrop.connext.network is the only URL where you'll be able to check your eligibility. It's the only URL where you'll be able to claim. Also, like when in doubt, always ensure that you're personally typing that URL instead of clicking on links that might be malicious. As a good rule of thumb, like always check the token contract. That'll be on the eligibility page. It's published on the official kind of Connext socials and site. So make sure you're checking the token contract to make sure you're interacting with the right one. And as a rule of thumb, like Connext will never ask you for your private key or seed phrase, and the same goes for Tokensoft, of course. We'll never ask you to send us tokens or funds. There's not going to be any surprise giveaways, things like that. Team members will never reach out to you or DM you. If you have questions about any of this, please join the Connext Discord. Again, it's discord.gg/Connext. Speak to a member of the team by opening up a ticket. We're happy to personally kind of like reach out after we receive a ticket or things of that nature. But as most of you already know, like people will try and take advantage of other folks in this space. And so we just want everyone to stay safe and to have a wonderful experience here. So if you do notice any like malicious activity, we have a scam reporting channel on the server. Like, please be proactive in helping to support your fellow Web3 users and enthusiasts. And again, like never give out seed phrase, private keys. We're never going to ask you to send us funds. There's no surprise giveaways. So unless you're personally going to airdrop.connext.network, you should assume that it is not official and not coming out of either Tokensoft or Connext.
Thank you so much for that safety disclaimer. I know now some of us in this chat have had the unfortunate experience of clicking on some of those unfortunate links, but everybody please be wary, be careful, and always trust your gut. So we're gonna open it up for a little Q&A. I'm sure some of you have some questions after hearing all that. So yeah, does anybody have anything to ask for the teams?
Oh, while we're waiting for audience questions, I've got one for Sanjay. How do you describe in like a couple sentences how it's even possible to send messages across blockchains? Like, how does Connext even work?
Oh, in a couple of lines? Damn, that's going to be hard. Let's see. Okay. Okay, let's so considering two blockchains, let's take them as two different databases. So when we are trying to sync in information between two databases, how the only way it's possible, which we tend to use in the bridge ecosystem, is that having one channel or one stream of non-validated bridge, which will pass that information from one side to another. So that is something we call using via different number of validators, having multi-sig in operations. But considering what we chose to do as Connext is that there are these bridges. So if we consider like rollup as optimism, Arbitrum, and the information is flowing through the Ethereum, we have these native setup of native bridge which have been there or to share this information from Ethereum to Arbitrum or Optimism or any other blockchain we take. These are the way these bridge have been constructed, and these are the essentials to each of these bridges. So each of these chains. So, in any possible case this bridge fails, there would be consequences on this on Arbitrum, and that's the worst. That's the point of scaling of the security which you are looking at. So instead of having a validator set, multisig, or local verification, which has its own merits and demerits, we chose to use these bridges as our messaging layer to pass and sync the information under a Merkle root, which you explained earlier how we used it for the token calculation itself. So we have these Merkle roots which are synced from one side to another, and then then any message which are passed by the user are taken care by the fast path, or what we say there are players in in the system we call routers. They look at these information or requested parsing of the information from one side to another. They take the risk and complete it for the user and wait it via the messaging layer to be completed. Now I realize you said 2 lines, and that would have multiple lines.
Sanjay, I was going to say, you saying it would be difficult, it sounds like is an understatement.
It is difficult. I would actually think about this and post it as a tweet. Like, how would you, the basic way to explain connection, like within 2 lines or something?
Let me see if I can at least get us in the right ballpark from a semi-non-technical perspective. Basically, Connext utilizes the underlying AMBs, which are the canonical bridges between chains. And those light client implementations read like the full state history. So you get kind of like the most secure communication between chains possible. So if you trust like Arbitrum Optimism, we basically use that same like messaging infrastructure that they do to communicate history with Ethereum. Basically, when transactions happen, all of those routes are aggregated together. They're routed through Ethereum and then propagated to the other chains. And so this allows for basically like the most secure cross-chain messaging and infrastructure possible. The one problem with that is latency. So going through Ethereum mainnet in particular takes a lot of time. Propagating those routes also takes a lot of time. So what we do is, as to Sanjay's point, we have this series of routers, which will basically like fast track that for you. If they see that you are trying to transfer funds, they will basically like give you those funds on the destination chain immediately, and they will wait in the slow path for you. So they trust the security of the system. They know that once that transaction's initiated, like they're going to receive it on the other side. And so they wait for you. And so this kind of gives us the best of both worlds. There's that like really strong trade-off space in cross-chain where you see a lot of providers and things like that. They don't want to sacrifice the latency. Everybody's like wants to be as quick as possible. And so a lot of times what that ends up meaning is that people take shortcuts on the security side. They're using just like a multi-sig or otherwise to validate these transactions. And we believe that's like a worse security model. And so that's why we've developed this kind of like router infrastructure that allows for individuals to reap the benefits of the speed while basically having the routers wait for you. And maybe with that, I will actually, Micah, if you'd like, I can just jump directly into some of the questions that I'm seeing pour in and see if we can't get a few of these answered.
Yeah, that sounds great. I saw there were a couple good ones in the reply thread.
Yeah, cool. So the first question here is around like the eligibility criteria and really related to the snapshot, asking, can users still qualify? The final snapshot has been taken, and so there's nothing that any users can do at this point to qualify. You can, again, check your eligibility at airdrop.connext.network to see if you were already qualified. But once more, there's nothing you can do to qualify at this point. As far as the criteria go, our motivation was to try to not only reward like early users and supporters, but perhaps equally as important, folks that have stayed around and consistently used and supported the protocol over the years. Again, we've been around for quite a long time, so there's some associated questions in here related to like whether xPollinate users are eligible. I'm happy to say that xPollinate definitely was included. That was the kind of version 1 of the Connext bridge that wasn't branded as Connext. So many of you listening may have used xPollinate back in the day or Crosspollinate. And yes, users there will be included in the eligibility criteria. So if you used xPollinate, go ahead and jump in. One kind of primary question that we've received a lot over the last day is like, what if you used it once or twice? The minimum threshold is that you've done at least 5 transactions across like the versions of the network. But again, if you're interested in seeing your personal kind of eligibility and the broader criterion, you'll want to go to airdrop.connext.network. I see one more question in here that says, who are the known founders of Connext? That's Arjun, Lane, and Rahul. They are the original founders of Connext. And they're, all of their information is public and they're all known. And so if you look on our blog or our Twitter account, you can easily find them, a few of which are listening in right now as well. And as far as I can tell, it looks like that's the majority of the questions, unless there's one that I maybe overlooked.
I have a question, if I may ask it.
Go for it.
I think, I think Connext is like a very fascinating, like interconnectivity primitive. And I think cross-chain distributions are one application of it. But what are some other applications that you guys are seeing people build on Connext? What are some other cool use cases that we may not have heard about?
Chain abstraction is one of the really, really cool feature which differentiates us, or like that should be the next step to achieve the cross-chain abstraction. If folks have heard about like account abstraction, that has been like hot like this whole year. I believe cross-chain abstraction is something which is the next cool kid party thing, which would expand the ecosystem to have the more user adoption, have the simplicity and the UX we aspire to have for the blockchain. So when I say cross-chain abstraction, it means that any user or any dApp can start on any chain and have the capability or feature set to enable any user to onboard from any chain and interact in the most seamless way possible. So they don't have to make 4 to 5 transactions if there is a application which has been constructed on Polygon, and if they want to interact from Arbitrum, they don't have to bridge their funds from Arbitrum to Ethereum, Ethereum to Polygon, and then do this third transaction of approving and having the next interaction take place. It could all happen in a single transaction. That is what I'm talking about when I say cross-chain abstraction.
Yeah, Sanjay, I completely agree with you in that regard. I think that in the Web3 space, it's kind of interesting. I would say compared to a lot of like user-facing applications in the Web2 world, I would wager that most of us agree that like the UX in the Web3 space is abysmal by comparison. It takes a lot of technical know-how. And when you get into cross-chain, you're kind of getting onto the far end of what it means to be a user in the Web3 space. You have to have a lot of like tangential knowledge around how to use a bridge, like what gas assets are, things of that nature. And so, in a current world where you may have a token on one chain and you're looking to like deposit that into a pool on another, you have to spend the majority of your time actually like away from the end user facing application. You may have to like bridge those funds, and then once you reach the destination chain, let's say that the destination is something like Polygon, then if you don't have funds to pay the gas fee, if you don't have Matic, for instance, then you have to most oftentimes like go to a centralized exchange to acquire that. You can't even do so through a swap. But again, all of this requires like the knowledge of these things in the first place. And so I think that we build really large barriers to entry inadvertently. And because a disproportionate number of users of Web3 applications and infrastructure are highly technical, we actually have like set the bar very low for what we would consider acceptable user experience. And so from a chain abstraction side, we want for an individual to be able to interact with the dApp without ever leaving there. And so behind the scenes, we can handle like the bridging or the swapping or any of the other steps necessary to kind of make that interaction occur successfully, unbeknownst to the user. In much the same way as like in a Web2 world, if you were to pay with a debit card, you don't need to understand that payment infrastructure, the steps that it goes through to validate the transaction, nor would you want to. And even more so, if you had to take action on each of those steps individually, you would never end up going and buying a coffee or otherwise. It would just be far too cumbersome. And so from a chain abstraction perspective, I think that's one that's really exciting is, in order to reach like the next phase of Web3 user adoption, we truly do need to build like an easier and more seamless user experience. And so I think that we will see a lot of interesting new use cases and polished design come out of that. The other one that is enabled kind of by like our core messaging primitive, this xCALL, that I think we will see a lot more of, Mason, in the years to come, is actually the ability for applications to be entirely contract owned. So maybe you can imagine a world in which you have like the front end of an application stored on something like IPFS. And basically we can get to a place where through secure and fast cross-chain communication, we can actually have an application that's pulling those remote resources from other chains. And similar to like JS style callbacks with xCALL, you can actually like request information from other chains and receive a callback back. So that will open up a multitude of additional use cases just by the ability to have kind of like cross-chain native applications that are entirely contract owned. And then I would say on the cross-chain governance side, very similarly, like a lot of DAOs are interested in creating, these kind of like autonomous communities that allow for governance or actions to be taken across chain. But right now, especially with gas fees and things like that, during certain kind of like cycles of the crypto space, we find that it impedes like day-to-day usage just because like gas fees get high, things like that. And so the more we kind of like deploy this open infrastructure and collaborate with projects across the space, I think we're only seeing, the actual tip of the iceberg when it comes to use cases that will be enabled through this. So Yeah, a lot of exciting things to come. If you guys are builders or researchers in the space that would like to explore more or help to be involved in a lot of these primitives, yeah, we always strive to be a very open and transparent community. And so please get in contact with us. We would love to collaborate.
Yeah, and just to add one note to that, like all the infrastructure we're building here that we're talking about for this specific airdrop is meant to be general purpose. So like if you're hearing this and you're thinking about tokens that you need to be cross-chain or that you need to be distributed across different chains, like just know that this is designed to be sort of like an open, accessible set of technology that anyone can adopt. None of this is supposed to be closed source that's walled off to like Tokensoft only or Connext only.
Amazing. Let's just give one last call, see if anybody else in the audience has any more questions.
I was just going to say, I mean, supporting the world's first cross-chain airdrop while working with longtime friends over at Connext, come on, this is totally amazing. And super cool to hear all the future possibilities that are there. So thanks for sharing, Matthew. I was just curious if, somebody from the Connext team could talk a little bit about some of the feedback that we're receiving right now regarding the xERC20 standard. What are builders saying about it? Some thoughts there and feedback.
Yeah, so I'm happy to answer the beginning of that, and Sanjay, if you'd like to chime in, that's great as well. I think the reception has largely been positive. I mean, in general, in the space right now, we are seeing like a lot of proprietary approaches to this, and to me, that's actually like generally a positive thing. It means that as kind of like interoperability or cross-chain infrastructure providers, we're all realizing that these same sets of problems exist. I think what makes xERC20 unique is that it is the only approach right now that is an open standard. So any individual, similar to ERC20 itself, where any individual can deploy a token contract. When Arjun first kind of like theorized this idea of token sovereignty, that was the ultimate goal. Like, don't tie yourself to a bridge or a certain infrastructure provider or a certain chain. Allow the token issuers to maintain control over their contracts and who they work with. And so I think that's one of the pitfalls we see with some of those proprietary standards is that you still have the issue of like the bridge owning the contract, for instance, or being locked into a given bridge ecosystem. And so that's where we're seeing kind of the most excitement. Obviously, it was first introduced like right after some of the multi-chain things happened, and so we've been working to try and help individuals that and token issuers that were affected by that. But in general, yeah, I think the feedback is really great. People as they start exploring it have come to realize like how much easier it is not only to implement, but even like if they have an existing token, seeing that the migration and the means by which you can do so is quite easy. And so, yeah, we expect to see a lot more kind of like support in the coming days. I know that during conversations that have been happening publicly between the other bridge providers, chains and ecosystems, we're starting to see like a lot of early commitments for support there. And so, yeah, we're super excited. There will be a lot more kind of like announcements to come of folks that are actively building on xERC20 and looking to deploy those. And so, yeah, super exciting stuff. If you'd like to learn more, there's quite a lot of information out there now. You can look at the proposal itself on the ETH Magicians forum or check out Arjun's Twitter for a thread there. There also now is like a basic kind of layman's terms explainer on xERC20, just at xerc20.com. And so that's a great resource for individuals looking to just learn a little bit more about like why this type of open standard is important and what you can do with it. But yeah, I think pleased is an understatement. We're really excited to see people thinking about some of these kind of more pressing problems when it comes to cross chain. For anyone that's bridged, like seeing various versions of a token and not understanding which one you need to hold, or getting some version of it and having to swap into another version. Like, it just leads to inefficiencies. You have to kind of like transact additional times. And so yeah, we kind of envision a world where the token issuer maintains control there, and you have one version of a token on each chain that's canonical. And so, yeah, truly really excited about it. If anyone is interested in the standard in general, like I said, you can check out the ETH Magicians forum to see like the proposed implementation and EIP changes there. xerc20.com has like a little explainer. And then in advance of that, Connext does have a service where we're offering to help deploy some of those token contracts, or help you to rather, and they would be kind of seamlessly upgradable once that EIP goes into effect. And so, yeah, lots of ways to get involved. I would say, again, if you're a researcher or kind of a builder in the space that's interested in joining the conversation, check out the ETH Magicians forum post. We would love any feedback on that. Again, this is meant to be an open token standard to benefit the entire space. And so, yeah, the more people that can join that conversation, the better.
Amazing. Just pin that Ethereum Magicians link here in the space for everyone to go to that. Yeah, it just seems like the exact thing that this is the exact type of protocol that crypto needs, and a parallel theme to account abstraction in this bear market, which is, hey, we've got to make crypto usable for normal people, and it shouldn't take 45 minutes to do something cross-chain. So yeah, amazing. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And Tokensoft team, for everyone that joined here, again, like from the Connext side of the house, just want to express an immense amount of gratitude. You guys have been absolutely incredible. And again, for anyone that is interested in kind of learning more about this type of infrastructure, who is interested in having a token that can be deployed across chains, or more specifically doing a cross-chain airdrop, reach out to the Tokensoft team. They're incredible to work with. They've been beyond supportive. And we're really excited to see this brought to market as again, a public good and an available offering for anyone to use.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much for the kind words, Matt. We really appreciate that, and it's been a pleasure to work with the Connext team as well.
Awesome, and thanks again for everyone that joined in. As that final closing note, if you have questions about the airdrop, if you're uncertain of what to do, or think that people are posting malicious links, like, please let the broader Connext ecosystem know by just going to Connext's Discord channel at discord.gg/Connext. And with that, yeah, I think we can wrap it up. And thanks again to everyone who joined in today.